Hi, it's Darren Hunty here, and we are with Deniz Yusuf. And of course, today we are interviewing Jason Wright. We are with the PM Growth Expert podcast show, where we interview the very best growth experts and BDMs on the planet. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Welcome. Hello.
So
it's great having you on board, Jason.
Thank you.
That's cool. Now, before we get started, we have to give a shout out for one of our exclusive partners, which is EBM Landlord Insurance. Now, Deniz, I remember well before you were in property management, around about 20, maybe even 30 years ago, the way we treated pets in property management was a lot different. Back then, tenants had cats and dogs. Well, now they've got fur babies. And the pet is, and the way it's been received in the home, it's been a lot different. Obviously, pets are now coming inside a lot more. And I think as an industry, we are encouraging people, and as an industry, we're encouraging that we've got to be more pet friendly because of the type of families we're dealing with. And of course, then what comes to mind is the risk and so forth. And the people at EBM Landlord Insurance have some great pet cover. So what I recommend you do is go to rentcover.com.au, get in contact with them and find out exactly what type of pet cover that you can receive to make sure you have the very best landlord insurance cover. So let's move on, Deniz, over to you.
Yeah, so Jason, absolutely honor to have you on this podcast with us. So look, I remember the first time I got this phone call from this guy, Darren, and I was working at Integrity Real Estate, and I get this guy ring up, and he swears at me, and he says, I've just had a busy month, but I've been told there's someone who can list more properties, and what you're doing, I obviously need to learn. And Jason can clarify me on the exact wording, but and my thoughts were, what, you want to spend 2 weeks with me and learn how messy my desk is? I wouldn't know what to do, and that was my introduction to Jason. And and watching what he's done since that very first phone call, we stayed connected. And Jason was one of the first people that chased me down. My first trip to Adelaide, Jason, my very first trip. I remember putting a post on Facebook saying, I've got a couple of hours to spare. Who wants to pick me up at the airport? And he couldn't get on there quick enough.
Right. I'll just jump in. I remember now, of course, Jason is a commercial property manager, BDM, so he's out there signing up commercial real estate. But when we first connected, you were working with a business in Adelaide. You're on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland at the moment, but back in Adelaide in the northern suburbs, you're kicking a lot of goals with Essential Property Management, where you're working there with your mum, Michelle. I remember you coming along to my seminars and working with me. And I remember doing we did some fee maximization training, and you just went and kicked it out of the park immediately.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I remember you and I used to catch up for the odd coffee at Nova Cafe, actually, in Gawler, when we were both living in Gawler. And I remember saying, hey, I had this really good month, and I don't know how I did it, but it was a near-death experience. And you're like, well, you got to call this guy called Deniz. Deniz is in Nowra. And so I looked, I'm like, where is Nowra?
I think people still say that anyway. So, Deniz, mate, we need to get this going, all
right? And that's where the call came. So, Jason, why did you join real estate? What was the reason behind it? You've got some history in hospitality, etc., but real estate.
Okay, so Mum had started working in property management, and she started a small business in the lounge room and said I should join real estate. And in the back of my mind, I always knew real estate was probably the next step for me. But you're just in that space where you just don't think you can risk leaving a really great job that you love. My 5th year budget came, and it was out of the radar in terms of what I could achieve for the following year, because it was 100% growth on each year from the previous. And I just said to my mum, well, let's do it. My family are avid investors. We had a significant portfolio, and we kind of just basically got drunk and went, well, let's do this. We can do it. We don't need a brand. We'll just start and see what happens. And we've been in the lounge room of my mum's house for a long time, only till about 18 months ago. And the rest is history. That was April 2000. That's a lie. October 2011, I started doing BDMing part-time. I'd grown about 65 managements when I quit my job in April of 2012. I won Property Manager of the Year in October of 2012, and the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah, and it was 2012 when you made contact with me. So tell us about your office, your town, your marketplace. So obviously, you're doing commercial now. So, I mean, one of the great things that people learn today is you've done commercial and residential. You've done both. So if you
Correct.
so if you want to share, your marketplace and about your office.
Right now, my marketplace is the glorious Sunshine Coast, and we actually have two offices, one on the Sunshine Coast and one in Morayfield, which is Moreton Bay region. I'm blessed with something that no one else in the country can say, which is the two offices that I rule are the two fastest growing regions in Australia right now.
That's
so
great.
If I'm not investing on Moreton Bay or the Sunshine Coast, then that's really your prerogative, and I wish you the best of luck being a loser.
So from a commercial property management point of view, is business booming for businesses? Is the economy doing really well?
The business is booming. The reality is, if you look at it from a residential perspective, the Sunshine Coast region, Aura is a brand new development here, which is a Stockland development. It is the largest master plan community in Australian history that's broken ground about 18 months ago. They've got 6.5 years left of the project. There'll be 20,000 homes. To put it into perspective for people that are familiar with Queensland, it'll be 1.4 times the size of North Lakes when it's complete. It'll have 50,000 residents in that one pocket alone. And there are 3 other similar developments happening on the Sunshine Coast right now.
Wow. And hear this, Darren, the important thing is a good BDM knows his stats. Jason's sharing, and this is important, he's sharing, he knows what's going on in the future development of his area. He knows how many potentials there's going to be, how many families, how many, and that is so important from a BDM's point of view. You need to be in touch with that. And given that, Jason's got some commercial, he's obviously working in the commercial sector, but he's throwing residential stats at us as well. And this is stuff that he's talking with potential investors, that he knows his stuff. So he's looked upon as a market leader in that because he knows his stats. Yes. Property management is exactly the same. You need to know how many vacant properties there are in a price range, or how many is expected to get built. Brisbane, how long in the last few years have they had problems with 2-bedroom units? And this is knowing your stuff. So kudos and well done to you, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you. What I'll add to that is it's important for me to know the residential stats, just like it's important for the residential guys to know some basic commercial stats. Yeah. And the reason is because if you don't have an element of infrastructure, and infrastructure is the commercial product that supports the residents and vice versa, then we don't have a product to sell. So each of us have to work together in some aspect.
Yeah, well said. So Jason, what's your growth been in the last 12 months? Like how many properties have you grown? What's your, the value that you brought into the business?
So we measure it 2 ways, because you've got to take into consideration that I would argue that a commercial building would be the equivalent of a apartment block or small block of units. So I measure the building in addition to the tenancies inside the building. So I would say in the last year, it's about 145 new managements. It's slightly down on the year before at about 180. But I've changed my pitch. I'm not just taking anything anymore. We're just doing high value buildings, and we're trying to focus on things that have at least 5 tenancies.
If we can, again, put this in a bit more perspective for our residential management viewers, what's the average fee income you're seeing per management per year? What sort of dollars we're talking in fee income, or total
Income?
fee each management
Look,
bringing in to the company?
so each management for me, if it's not worth at least $3,500 a year, it's really not worth my while.
So that's right at the low end, and yet we got people around Australia getting out of bed for $1,000 a year in management, in total fees, including management fees.
Yeah. And look, I've crunched the numbers, and the reality is I don't see how you can make money on less than 1,800.
Yeah.
And 2,200 is a truly ideal number in terms of, by the time you do some inspections, get out site, do a couple of emails a month, catch up with the owner once a quarter for a blowing the breeze kind of conversation, and add all that labor up, I don't see how it costs less than 2,200. So if it's not going to bring you 2,200 and they're not attached to 5 other properties you're going to get, I genuinely don't see the point. Not all. You shouldn't say yes to everything because you're working your butt off for no money.
Yeah, well done. So knowing what you know now in real estate, like if you were to meet yourself on day one, Jason starting day one, Jason the expert coming over here, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
Get a coach the minute you can afford it. Go to every seminar or training that you can go to. Jump onto every Facebook community with every property management or BDM there is. You'll discover which ones do and don't work for you, but to start with, join them all.
Yeah.
And then work out which ones are and aren't good for you as an individual, and slowly get rid of the others, which is what I've done, or take a step back in some of them. I'm obviously very active in 3 or 4 communities, and I'm very inactive in another 3 or 4, and then I'm not involved in many at all. I just remove
I'd like
myself.
to jump in. I reckon about 2012, Jason, we had a conversation about social media because I had no idea back then. And this is
now you're the expert.
You're getting into the Facebook groups and how to make money. And another guy that really influenced me on social media is Deniz. And there was a third person in the mix as well. And now Deniz and I train Facebook marketing around the planet, but I just want to say thank you for your advice back then. It's exactly the same as what you just said. Get into those Facebook groups and just get involved.
Yep, get involved in all of them. Then the last one is day one. Just get into your community. Soccer, just wear your badge. You guys have got your logos on your shirt. Get into your community with your logo and your name tag and let people talk to you. Go to every networking event there is. Again, no different to the Facebook thing. There's 100 of them. Go to all 100, work out what 4 work for you and dump the other 96.
Yeah, well done. So, I suppose this question's quite similar to what I've just asked you about meeting yourself, but if you were to start a rent roll from scratch today, what would be your 3 key strategies of growth? Like, what would be what would you do?
What would I do? Absolutely do the networking, social networking and face-to-face networking. We underestimate the face-to-face networking. So networking, number 1. Number 2, mailbox drops. You and I love them, Deniz. No one else does them, and I don't believe they don't do them. Just listed, just leased. Just listed, just leased. Just listed, just leased. You pick a demographic or a small area and you just list and just lease. They won't notice the first, second, or third time. The 4th time your brochure goes on the fridge. 6 months later, they'll call you up. But just listed, just leased consistently. Do not do it inconsistently. Don't waste your time unless you do it consistently.
Good
tip. The 3rd thing is letters. I'm sorry, I still send 100 letters every single week, and I get a management every single week. Consistent.
And you mastered this when you first started your own office. I know it's based different in each legislation and each state and each town and each country, etc. But you actually went to the local council.
And mate, here in Queensland, I'm blessed with jumping onto RP data, or we use Price Finder, finding out who the owner is. 80% of commercial property is owned in an entity, so I have to do a company search, etc. But back in the old days, I literally had to go down to Gawler Council, sit there with the folder. She'd give it to me. I wasn't allowed to photograph it. Wasn't allowed to record it. Had to sit there and hand write 100 names and addresses, take them back, put them into a spreadsheet, send them in, do a mail merge, send 100 letters. You know.
I guess
and
like
third weekend she got a little bit fast, so I started taking muffins to the girls at council.
I just want to jump in. We've actually got one of your prospecting letters, Jason. It's just been loaded. It's a cold prospecting letter to turn into warm. From members, go to our Inject Growth Series library. You'll find that under letters and tools. It's quite a lengthy letter that we've lovingly borrowed from you, Jason. But also for anyone interested in becoming members too, just go to inspiredgrowthtraining.com and you can actually have a look at our IGT Inner Circle membership joining there as well. Sorry, back to you guys.
No problem.
Yeah, excellent. So, yeah, you know, letters, letterbox dropping, communities. I mean, they're all the face-to-face meetings. They're all so vital. And what's really interesting, Jason, people get so bogged down with technology so much, they forget about the stuff that works. And because writing a letter, letterbox dropping, it takes a little bit of effort. So it's always that first job that a business owner, when they're growing their rent roll, they drop that first. And you know, it's interesting because I'll go into an office and I'll be training. Oh yeah, and I'll say, so what did you do when you first started? Oh, I walked the street. Oh, that's interesting. So you don't do that anymore. Yeah. But it worked.
Correct. And look, you know, well, I know that you love video and you're getting me slowly attached to video. The 14-day challenge is certainly helping. But I don't love video, and that's okay. What's really important is you find the things that work for you that you love doing and do them consistently.
Yeah.
And if I can go back to the letters for 1 second, when you get a letter in the post after you've been away, Deniz, and it's in a white A5 envelope, and it's plain with a glass panelled window on the front, what do you think?
I don't open it.
Oh my God, another bill. I'll leave that till tomorrow. I'm really tired.
I'll wait for the one with a stamp that says pay now.
Correct. So what the other thing the guys need to do for me, put the letter inside the envelope, use either coloured envelopes, you can use business envelopes, no problem. But the next trick is hand write your envelopes so that they look personal. Really critical.
I got one in the mail last night. Admittedly, it was my birthday the other day, and you know, it's a beautiful. It's got the branding on it as well. It's come from New Zealand, and it was the first thing I opened. It was, you know, because the value of that is just phenomenal.
Because when it's handwritten, you think it's personal, and then you open it and you go, oh, you tricked me, you little bugger, but I'll read it anyway.
Because you've got that 5 seconds to catch them, right? So well done. Yeah, very important. Okay, Jason, so right now, where you are, you turn up to work Monday morning and the phone rings. First thing Monday morning, and it's the bank manager. The bank manager says to you, Jason, if you don't pick up 10 managements this week, we're closing the doors. We need 10 managements or we're shutting the doors. What do? Go.
Okay. So first things first, you call every single owner that you've already got on your books and you ask them if they've got another property that you could manage for them, or they've got a family member or friend that they could recommend and that you'd give them some kind of recognition or reward for bringing that management over. You do the exact same thing with your tenants, because some of your tenants are renting a 4-bedroom because they're two single people with kids that have got together, and both of them have 3-bedroom houses 4 doors down that you don't know about. So you do the same thing with your owners, same thing with your tenants. Then you call every tradie, because every one of your tradies has a property, quite probably, because tradies are our new range of self-made multimillionaires in the next 10 years. So look after your tradies because they will become your clients, and they deal with 4 or 5 agents. So it's really critical you're better than the other 4 they deal with. Then you go to your kids' childcare centres, schools, etc., and talk to all the mums and say, hey, if you bring a friend over, I'll wash your car, I'll give you some kind of reward. All my families and friends got a $200 referral fee for bringing business across to me. Then I have a dinner party with all my mates. You know, most of us are in our 40s, which means we all own property and we all own several other properties, quite probably. So what we have in common with people our age group is most of our friends are homeowners. Yeah, so most of them have some equity. And so you've got to go show your friends how to put their equity to work and help them buy investment properties.
Yeah, well done. So that's a good point that people forget about is, you know, the education on that. And you basically highlighted one thing that I love is the first thing you never mentioned about going and hitting up the sales team for referrals.
I've never relied on a sales team because I started my business as a property management only.
And that's what I love. That, you know, one of my favorite quotes that I've been saying for the last all this year and it is, you know, stop relying on the sales team to grow the rent roll. It's not their job. Their job is to sell properties. Your job is to grow the rent roll. And you know, you're talking about, you know, picking up this thing and it's called a phone and actually making phone calls. You know, pick up the phone to be proactive in chasing the business. So, Jason,
can I stop you for? Or you go first, actually.
No. I'm going to my next question. So you go.
Sure.
You go.
Okay, so let's go back to the sales thing because I have started ineffectively is the wrong word. Unintentionally, I've become a buyer's agent in recent months. And the way that happens is because all of your sales members in your office, they get the guy that comes through the door that buys the house, and the other 14 people that came through the door to buy the house, guess what? Your lazy sales agent ignores them 14 people. So pick up the phone, call those. The guy that bought the house might let you manage it, but call the 14 that didn't. Why didn't you buy it? What are you looking for? What do you need from me? Let me help you buy it. Go and conjunct with other agents, not even necessarily in your agency, or go to your sales meetings and go, guys, I've got Deniz. He's looking for 3 beds, 2 baths. These are the suburbs he wants to buy it in. Help them buy the investment property. You will absolutely get that management. They won't go elsewhere.
Well done. And that's what we call an investor support service. So,
and if you received an email from me recently, my role has changed to investor support manager.
Well done. That's what I'm loving. Well done. It's music to my ears. I love it. So well done, Jason. You've just taken it to another level. So, okay. So if I can just quickly add on that referral where you said you go to the kids' play schools, preschools, whatever. I was training an agency this morning and, you know, they're trying to come up with an idea on having a promo. And actually, it's Kaylee. We're going to have Kaylee on one of the recordings soon. And I said to her, you know, we could do an ad on social media saying, you know, I want to donate $200 to your charity. We want to give your school, your kindergarten, $200, you know, and having, you know, sometimes it touches people's hearts that you want to give back to the community more than the person actually receiving the fee themselves, you know. So because there's a lot of community businesses or you know, whether it's a charity that really could do with the help. So now my next question is, you know, what would you say?
Back to the childcare centre real quick because I know we're probably going to run out of time. The things I ever did with the childcare centre is because I used to do week on, week off with my nephew. Is I took in 2 bottles of red, 2 bottles of white, and 2 bottles of sparkling on a Friday afternoon into the childcare centre and said, "You girls have worked your butt off this week. Here's some wine. It looks like you could do with it." It's cost me $40. next week, hey, Jason, this is Vanessa. She's looking for a property manager, and the referrals just came in. Best 40 bucks ever spent.
Love it. I mean, you know, to 10 weeks of wine and you're still in front, right?
Correct.
Well done. That's really good. So, what would you say your best rent roll growth strategies are, Jason, that brings in, you know, 80% of the business? So typically I would normally say that, you know, 70 to 80% of someone's rent roll growth would come from a sales team. But yourself, as proactive as you are, what would you say would be your biggest rent roll growth strategies that do bring in around 80%?
Well, the buyer's agent thing is definitely working for me right now. And for the first time in our business, now that I do have a sales team, it does help me significantly. To be perfectly honest, word of mouth is still one of the best way that you can get leads is to service the leads that you've got. It's as simple as that, you know, and so people love, don't we all have the best chiropractor and the best physiotherapist and the best mechanic on the planet? And every time your mate's got a sore neck, you go, oh, you need to go to my guy. And you'll go, no, you need to go to my guy. Exact same thing with property management.
Well done.
You need to go to my guy. Oh, that's me, by the way.
So Jason, another question. So you're out there getting managements. What's your main point of difference that you use to impress the prospective client to sign with you and not go with the other agent down the road? What are your main points of difference that you rely on?
Look, my point of difference, which goes back to this investor support manager, is I'm really, Darren, I meet you today. It's really fantastic. You're trusting me with this property. But Darren, what's your 2, 5, and 10-year goal? How are we going to get wealthy together by you letting me fulfill your dreams? That's my point of difference. You tell me, Jason, I want 7 properties in the next 10 years. I'll get you a free appraisal with my mortgage broker. I'll get you a free appraisal with my accountant that I use and recommend, and a free appraisal with my financial planner so that we can come up with a plan to achieve your 10-year goal. And then I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to help you buy 7 properties in the next 10 years. That's my point of difference. No one else can promise that.
Now, one thing I was impressed with some of your previous points of difference that you used, and let's go back to Gawler in South Australia with Essential Property Management, and you were really creating a point of difference in just about everything. But I was really impressed on how you used a point of difference about how you chased late rent. Now, for our American viewers, obviously rent delinquencies, we call it rental arrears. But so Jason, tell us with your rental arrears, how did you convince or impress the client around something as sterile? I was talking about late rent. How did you use that to get the deal over the line and convince them?
Well, you'll break it down, because when you're in front of a client, they'll go, so what's your policy on rent arrears? And I'll go, well, I bet everyone else has told you they have a 0 tolerance for rent arrears. And they go, yeah, they have. And I say, and did they tell you what that means? And they go, yeah, it's 0 tolerance. I'm like, no, well, so we live in a world where the rent is due on Thursday. I'm going to give you benefit of the doubt, and you get 1 day's grace in my office. So EFT transfer, when you're doing the lease sign, we say to our tenants, your rent's due on Thursday, therefore you should be paying it on Tuesday or Wednesday to ensure it's in my account on Thursday. But it's not there Thursday. I don't tell you I'll give you a day's grace, but I do give them a day's grace. But on Friday, the friendly SMS reminder, hey, Deniz, it's probably an oversight, but please check your rent. Let us know if you've paid it overnight. Then 3 days, you get an SMS and a phone call. On 5 days, you get an SMS, a phone call, and a letter. And on 7 days, depending on which state you're in, you serve the remedy to breach. Now, some people will tell me that's harassment. I don't care. You know, I'm getting paid to receive your rent. And guess what? I don't work for free. My salary is a direct proportion of your rent. So 8% because it's resi. 8% of zero is zero. I'm not doing it for free.
Yeah, well
So
done.
just moving on and interpreting again for our American viewers. Our American viewers are probably thinking, well, hang on, our rent's due on the first every month. Of course, in Australia, we deal with weekly or 2 weekly factors. So yeah, a lot more work than our American viewers where you're dealing with rent being paid once a month. Just moving on. So Jason, I know without even asking the question that you wouldn't be the cheapest guy in town. So you're up against cheaper agents. And when the prospective client said to you, well, Jason, if you can match your management fee with the other agency down the road, we'll go with you. How do you deal with that and still get full fees?
Sure. Well, there are a few things. First thing, and I learned this from you, Darren, years and years ago, show me what it is that the cheap guy will do for you. And it's really critical that you come up with a list that's 5 pages long. And I don't care how incidental the item that you will do for them is included in that list. But then you go, oh, well, Darren, they do 14 things and I do 47 things. What 24 things would you like me to remove from this list so that my service matches their service first and foremost?
Well done.
Then I also say to them, well, I have picked up managements from cheap agents. And then you show them some of those photos of those cheap managements. Now, the one that springs to mind was a friend of mine, and I picked it up from an agency that you'll know from Adelaide. Darren was my major competitor. And I literally had to use the body weight of myself to open the front door, knee deep in rubbish, 4 skips to get it out, pest control, etc., etc. Talks for itself. Just go to the next time you pick up the worst management you've ever picked up, take a video, take photos and put it in your pack.
Spot on. And you've always got that in your pocket. You know what I mean? You've always got that. I have some clients, they keep their phone in the car while they're going for an appointment. I'm like, no, have it with you, have it on silent, take vibrate off so it doesn't disturb you, so the bings and the bongs don't affect you, as Darren would put it. Because the phone has got evidence on there. You can show them testimonials, how you market properties, it's all there. So,
correct. Then what you need to do, just to finish that off, is usually you're talking 1%. And again, Darren, you taught me this. 1% at a $300 week is $3. So that's a cup of coffee. Darren,
not even a cup of coffee. A small coffee today costs $4.80.
Correct.
Crazy.
So back in the day, it was $3. So are you going to risk your children's inheritance for a cup of coffee, Darren?
There you go.
Yeah, well, son, getting personal with them.
Your competitors don't stand a chance. Have mercy.
Well, you've got to cut into their emotion. You get to their why and work on their why. Yeah. 85% of us invest for a single reason: our retirement or our children.
I think you're one of the best guys, out there that, you don't need to discount. You just prove your worth, prove your value. You'll then be able to get that full fee. But anyway, Deniz.
Now, with that said, I will say in commercial, I do discount, but I have a price strategy in place, which is I've got to have at least 50K a year in rent, which equates to $2,500 before you even get in the door. Then you've got to, if your rent is less than 100 grand but more than 50, I'll think about discounting you. And if you're more than 100, then 5, 6, 7% of $100,000 is still $6 grand. I can make $1 out of that.
Yeah, that's right. So you're taking that into account, there's some agencies that I work with. They've got a percentage scale, whereas if their KPIs are to get 10 managements, at least 8 of them have to be at full fee. But they'll consider that if there are higher than average rents and if all the other incidentals are still in place. So yeah, well done. So on KPIs, okay, what are some of your KPIs that you do to obviously to grow the rent roll? What are some of the things you've got in place on yourself? Now I know that one of your coaches gave you a KPI of 14 videos in 14 days or something. So there's one. So, but I'll let you.
Yeah, we're still working on that. I'm one day behind, if I'm really honest with you. Look, for me, I break it down into 10 brand new contacts every day because I go to the sales method. You know, if you look at all the successful agents and you jump and watch a Tom Ferry thing, he'll say, make the calls. You make your 30 calls, then you get your follow-up, you do this, you do that. So for me, my KPI is I got to make 10 calls every single day. It's in my calendar. It's my not negotiable. I don't get to go home until I've made 10 new contacts every day via that. My results come about because I've made my 10 calls. If I'm feeling stressed financially because I'm not making the money I want to make, you can almost definitely say it's because I haven't made the calls. For us, I've got one long-term goal. The long-term goal is to build our, by June 30, 2019, to build our monthly revenue to $80,000 per month. So I've broken that down on a month-by-month basis, which works out to about $6,000 per month in new fees. $6,000 per month, give or take, is $100,000 per month in rent, which is $1.2 million a year in annual rent. Because our average fee is 5 or 6% in commercial, it's significantly less than resi, and in some instances we do 4. Yep. So it's a low fee. But I don't chase managements, I chase fees.
Yeah, so your KPIs are based on the minimum fee, the minimum income that's coming in. So yeah. You've got your 10 calls. So what other KPIs have you got on yourself to do? Like, you know.
Okay, so I send 100 letters a week.
Yep.
Yep. I go to at least one networking event a week, but I try to get to 2 because I'm now a BBH member. So I do a Thursday breakfast every week. For the same group of people. So I try to go to one other style of thing. And jump on your local council. There'll be 1,000 things you can go to. Jump on the local council and work out when there's a brand new estate opening up and there's a launch, go to it. Go to the launch of the new BMW 5 Series. You'll be amazed where you can meet clients in your region.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, well said. That's really good. So you've kind of already answered the next question. It's about, you know, what's your next growth goal in the next 12 months and how are you going to achieve it?
Yeah. Look, I probably have answered it, but further to that, my goal beyond that is that I want to increase my team by another 2 people. In order to do that, I have to increase my portfolio by about 220 managements, which again breaks down to the standard 15-20 per month, which is industry standard. It's not dissimilar in commercial to resi. And I want to work out ways to reward my team more so that they can, they'll stay.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't get here on my own. I now have a very, very qualified and very, very committed team that get there with me. And you've got to reward them for your growth, because if you don't reward them for your growth, then they don't want to grow with you. And you'll get to a point where they're going, oh, it's too much work. They've got to be rewarded.
Yeah, so you've got those incentives in place. So
every team member needs to make a good 10K a year on top for 2 reasons. They can't afford to not stay, because they'll go down the road and have to take a 10K pay cut. They don't want to do that. You don't want them to do it. It's 10K, big deal.
All righty. Let's do the last question. We've got to wrap this up now. You have actually spoken 2 or 3 times at Deniz's before I was working with Deniz with the Inspire Growth Conference. You have been on stage, but you've got let's just say you are on stage, you're speaking to business owners and also to BDMs in the room. You've got 1 minute. What would be the most important thing that you would say to them in that 1 minute?
Well, I haven't covered it yet, but your website needs to be world-class. I hate technology, but you have to adapt to technology whether you like it or not. And you have to be, the young ones are better at it, they're quicker at it. And you have to networking at everything, and you have to learn every single solitary day. And I was at a retail conference last week, and they said, hands up everyone in the room that's got a coach or a mentor who's 25 or younger. And one person put their hand up. And so I've since then been looking into that. You must have a mentor that's younger than you, because they get technology in a way that I and you guys, even who are great at it, will never get it.
Agreed.
So
no, that's why I've got a daughter.
Especially when it comes to social media, they're just so good at it.
It's younger, and they're younger, they're smarter, and they're faster than
when
us.
you learn how to use Instagram properly, go to a young person. So
yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because when I'm talking about video technology, editing videos, this, that, and the other in office, I look to the principal and I say, go find the youngest person in the office and talk to them.
Yeah. Look, and how do you keep them? You help them buy their first investment property, and they'll return loyalty like you've never believed.
Well said.
Imagine a 19-year-old, you've helped them buy their first home by 21. Do you think they're going anywhere? Not if you help them buy their second one by 23 and their third one by 24.
And that's
absolutely not.
You need to be running a buyer's agency, I reckon. That's your next step there, Jason. But we're going to wrap things up. Thank you. So many big, chunky strategies and lots of little plus ones as well. In between all of that little conversation, between our main questions, there was lots and lots of great little strategies too that are going to get you a lot of effects. So make sure, of course, like anything with our viewers, none of this matters. We're bringing you the very best information, but none of it matters if you don't implement. So Jason, you are one of the great implementers that we work with. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, Deniz, some great
questions there. 4 seconds,
sure.
Which is on the implementing, Darren, which is quite simply, don't write the list, but implement 1 or 2 at a time, because if you have that huge list, you'll never implement. Master 1 implementation and then go to the next one.
He just wants to keep giving, doesn't he?
He does. Jason, thank you so much. Deniz, thank you.
My pleasure, guys.
We wrap this up, but thank you, everybody. And Jason, very quickly, what's your email if people have questions?
Jason.Wright, WRIGHT @raywhite.com.
No worries. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.